Okay, welcome back to lecture 2 for CS401. This lecture is about privacy and confidentiality. We're going to move reasonably quickly through this lecture, and here's the general structure. So the first chunk of this lecture is going to be about threats and responsibilities and what information security is. Then we're going to talk about some of the goals we have around information security, and then some examples of vulnerabilities, threats, and attacks, and then your example work and readings that you need to do for next week. So just a quick recap of last week's lecture. We talked about threats and responsibilities being different forms of risk management, and this tying into identifying the level and the severity of the threat at an early stage, and understanding the whole decision-making process that goes on behind that, and understanding that it's not just a technical solution, but that it's dialogue with stakeholders, interaction with a variety of different stakeholders, as well as this technical justification for any risk management strategy, and that including an aspect of research and development is critically important with cybersecurity because new threats and new technologies are coming online each and every day. So what do we mean by threats and responsibilities in a little bit more detail? Well, in general, a threat we can kind of characterize as any kind of exploitation, abuse, misuse, or taking advantage of information as a product. So information that belongs to someone else or that is private or personal or some information, the exploitation of that is typically considered some form of a threat. It can be direct or indirect interference in any part of this information flow from one place to another, and many countries have laws enshrining the kind of privacy and security of any of this information flow, and any harm and vulnerability as that occurs as a consequence of any of these acts, so exploitation of the information itself or interference with the information flow. That is all part of this kind of surface threat profile that we need to talk about here. So what is our responsibility as a cybersecurity professional to deal with some of these threats? It can be summarized in these 3 bullet points here. First, we have to aim to understand any possible countermeasures to go towards threats and responsibilities, and typically this kind of takes the form of education and training of staff. Then, as part of that is also identifying the appropriate countermeasures, which is developing skills in our staff and having experience using or developing the right tools. Of course, there is a variety of tools and technologies that exist at the moment to deal with these kind of threats, which we'll talk about in later lectures, but these first 2 bullet points do tie together quite strongly. And finally, we need a strategy, or at least to understand the strategy of each countermeasure, and that's generally indicating a higher level of policy implementation, policy experience. It's not just enough to say, here is our blanket solution for every possible scenario. We need to understand when that will work, when that policy won't work, what are the strengths and weaknesses of different policies that have been applied in different styles and in different ways. So I think this is a really good diagram, a really good way to conceptually understand how all of these fit together with some of the core technologies behind cybersecurity. So when we're talking about anything cyber, on the technical side we've got the software, the hardware, and the network, and they form the main critical vulnerabilities within our cybersecurity system itself. But of course that aren't the only weaknesses, that aren't the only places a threat can target. Beyond that, we've got the perimeter defense of the system, which we must defend if it has to be connected to the outside world, as most systems must be in this day and age. And as part of that, all of this stack, the software, the hardware, the network, all of that should have accountability built into it from the ground up. And that will give us an ability to detect the presence of a threat or evidence that a threat has occurred and that we have some responsibility to follow up on that. And as part of all of this, we typically, in this day and age, at any rate, see this kind of access control mechanisms as a way of enshrining this perimeter defense and accountability in both the software, the hardware, and the network of many modern systems. We'll come back to this diagram lots and lots over the coming lectures, but it's a really good way to understand how the more social and human parts of cybersecurity fit in with the more core technical components. So it's worth asking this question: what are we trying to protect and why it is important? And we're going to get into that in the next part of this lecture.